This is Boxes and Briefs, a podcast with real-life business stories. But we will be asking the hard questions and challenging traditions. So broaden your thinking with fresh perspectives and solve problems for business success. Welcome to another episode of Boxes and Briefs. My name's Lisa.
I'm Kelly.
And today we have with us the wonderful Sophie K.
Woo! Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Sophie's been with us before, but just to remind you, a well-being coach who helps business owners move from survival to thriving by aligning their personal and professional lives. So your personal life is not a break from your professional life or vice versa. It's
Yes.
one whole thing. Love that. Okay. Today we're talking about kind of looking after the leader, yourself, in a business, because there's so many things that can go wrong if you don't. My first question is, what made you realise that well-being needed to be treated as a core business strategy rather than a personal matter?
Look, a lot of what I've learned comes from my own personal experiences. And so obviously when I started running the business as a wellbeing coach, or I actually could call myself a happiness coach, a wellbeing coach, a vitality coach, life coach, it's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. I went through all of that where I tried to run my household, my children as an independent mum, run the business, just general life admin. And I just realized that I needed to put myself first in all of that. I'd learned that the hard way too many times in the past beforehand. When I looked at my business, and I spoke to my coaches about it, it was always just about the doing, right? The finances and the marketing. And I thought to myself, well, what about me? What about my well-being? What about hello? Yeah. Why is this not actually a core strategy of my business when I'm actually the person that's running all of this?
Yeah.
And it really just came out through conversations. And so for about 3 years now, I have made my well-being what I do for myself on an everyday basis, but also, once a month, quarterly, and so on. I've made that part of my strategy. So in the beginning of the year, if I look at what am I going to want to, what do I want to focus on for the rest of the year, I also look at what is there about my well-being that I would like to improve or that I would like to delve into a little bit further. And I make that part of my strategy and what I do. And it's been a game changer in my business. It's actually correlated, and get this, it's actually correlated to an increase in income. No. Every time I stop focusing on my well-being and I fall back into old habits, because let's face it, we all have them, my income goes down every time. Whereas when I start to focus on my well-being, I even when I go, okay, I really need a holiday, I actually need a break, I often make sales while I'm on holiday.
That's amazing.
It's really awesome.
So really what I'm hearing is you should be having a holiday like all the time.
I don't know about all the time, but I think it's important. It's important to create, I call it the spaciousness. If you don't create space in your life, how are you going to receive more of the things that you want? Because it's like having your closet, right? Your closet full of clothes. How are you going to put more clothes in this closet if you don't have any space to hold it? And it's the same thing with your life. If you don't have any space to receive more income or to receive more time or to receive more special moments with your children or to have greater breakthroughs in your business, if you don't have time and space to receive that, to experience it, how are you going to have it? So it's that same concept.
Business owners are on a bit of a loop, right? You get all recharged, re-energized, have your rest, whatever you need. You begin the cycle in business, you slowly get burnt out, and then you go, I got to do this again. And you recharge, relax, and then you do it again. But what you're saying is that you don't have to be on a loop. If you make it an everyday thing, or weekly, or monthly, or quarterly, and you prioritise it, you can be at that amazing place you are just after you've relaxed, recharged, ready to go.
Yes.
For longer.
Yes, and I suppose as part of that conversation, we do need to realise that everything in the world works in cycles. We have the seasons, especially as women, we go through our own cycles. Men hormonally will go through their own cycles. So we do have to take that into account. That even in my business, when I look at the year, I go through a specific cycle and when people are more likely to look for the kind of work that I do. So we do need to honour that. And at the same time, it's about really looking at how can we, with small, easy to do steps, continue to look after ourselves on a continuum. So on a continual basis, because if we don't do that, we are going to burn out and we are going to get to the end of the cycle and we will be tired and burnt out. And that actually means that we need to spend more time regenerating before we can actually continue. Whereas if you don't burn out and if you don't have to get to that place where you need to do that regeneration, which costs a lot of energy, you actually have that energy which you would use for the regeneration to move forward. So you're actually moving forward faster and progressing because you are keeping on top of yourself. And it's so easy to not to, especially in a world where, you know, being busy is a status symbol.
I was going to say, a lot of business owners wear burnout as a badge of honour.
Yeah.
So how do you get them to shift the mindset? What is it, do you think, that just tips them into maybe I should try something else?
Yeah, look, I think we always have to ask the question, what's actually happening behind that? What's the reason for us feeling like we have to constantly be busy? And usually what's underneath all of that, which is pretty much if you boil down anyone and everyone's problem, it always boils down to a feeling of I'm not good enough. Somewhere deep inside of them.
Everybody.
Pretty much everybody, yeah. It's I remember my counsellor saying this to me a few years back. She said, Sophie, all roads lead to I'm not good enough. And I found this to be very accurate. So when people are burning out and are burning out repeatedly, and they're finding themselves having to say they're busy because if they're not busy, they don't feel like they're doing enough. That's a version of I'm not good enough. Now, how do we shift that mindset? Is actually, it's not just a mindset, it's actually a being set. And this is something that I teach my clients, that we have to start talking just about our physical being and our mind. We have to start talking about our emotions and actually the spiritual part of us. Spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religion.
That's not very corporate.
No.
What are you doing?
Spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religion. Spiritual essentially means the lens with which you view the world. So what do you believe about the world to be true? So it's your belief system. And our belief system drives everything we do.
Including whether we are good enough or not.
That's right. And so it's really about having those bigger conversations. And look, I think I said this in the last podcast, is us humans are so complex because we have all these different experiences. We come from different walks of life. We've grown up with different parents. We've grown up in different environments. We've been exposed to lots of different things. And so therefore, we can't just use a blanket approach for every single one of us. But one thing that we can do is we all know that we need to look after ourselves and we need to pour more water back into our cup because if you can't keep pouring from an empty cup. So it's the way we shift the mindset is by actually going, this is about how you're being, because we're human beings.
So what's the impact of not looking after yourself when you're in leadership?
Well, this is an interesting one, and I've been thinking about this a lot, especially looking at these questions, right? The impact is always long term. So not looking after ourselves is something that we can handle for short periods of time. And this is because our bodies, us as human beings, we're designed to deal with short-term stress. We're designed to deal with a large output over a short period of time.
So like run from the woolly mammoth and hide in the cave.
That's right. That's right. Whereas if we do that long term, it starts to deplete us physically. And if we start to deplete physically, it will deplete us in our mind, our emotions, and our spirit as well, right? If you're feeling depleted, you're not as excited. You're not.
It's all over as well. You just want to lie on the couch and do nothing.
That's right. You just don't feel motivated, right? People call it being motivated. I'm just not feeling motivated. It's because you're not inspired. It's because you're not fulfilled.
You don't have the water in the cup to do something with it.
That's right. You're not brimming with vitality. How can you expect just all these big things about yourself? So the thing about well-being is that, again, if you don't look after yourself for a short period of time, that is something that you and your body can deal with. But then again, you go through that regeneration process because being in stress mode is depleting to our body. It is depleting to our spirit, to our mind, and our emotions. Once we go through that regeneration process, we kind of then start again from status quo, whatever status quo for each and every single us means for us. But if we stay in the stress mode for a really long period of time, we are constantly running on empty, and we're actually starting to physically, be impacted physically. So a lot of the chronic diseases and things that people are experiencing these days have to do with their lifestyle and their high stress lifestyle. Because it's actually, if you go through the stress cycle and you start to understand that, all the energy is being taken away from what your body doesn't seem necessary for immediate survival. So for example, if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, like regenerating or keeping your skin young isn't of priority in that moment. It's about survival, right? So it starts to take away nutrients and things like that from a bit different parts of your body. Yeah.
So if you're really stressed, you can look older than you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
So if you want to stay young, look after yourselves.
I love that. Okay, then. So I'm on board. Leaderships, peoples, CEOs, you need to prioritise self-care, looking after yourself so that you can be the best possible version of that.
Yes.
What's the most common pushback that you get from those leaders to, like, I don't have time for it, or what's the excuses for not doing it?
It's usually that I don't have time, but it's also this underlying belief that if they spend more time on themselves, they are going to let people down. They're not going to be able to do the things that they feel like they need to be doing for people. Now, chances are when you are someone who is overexerting yourself, feeling like you have to be busy all the time, chances are that you have some people-pleasing habits in there. Now, people-pleasing is actually a response to sometimes traumatic, but just experiences that have left us feeling less than, that have left us feeling like we are not good enough. And so we overcompensate by people-pleasing, by overstepping our own boundaries, by overexerting ourselves to please other people, even if those people didn't even ask for it. And so
it's true.
Yeah. And so one of the first things that I start to look at with my clients is, are you overexerting yourself in other areas of life? Are you overexerting yourself in relationships with people? Are you doing more than is actually beneficial for you? And here it comes for the other person, because people pleasing is not good for other people either.
No.
Because it's a codependent and imbalanced relationship. And especially in business, that can get really, really tiring really, really quickly. And it actually can seriously impact our bottom line. And we need to start having these conversations. So looking after our well-being, again, as I said, it impacts our bottom line. It really does.
So what's the thing, the pushback that you get about I don't have time, or I'm going to be letting other people down? What's the one thing that they can start implementing now that might be an easy first step?
Well, I think it's really asking themselves, where does this feeling come from? Where does this feeling come from that I feel like I need to do more for other people? I don't get to say no to other people. Where does this come from? Because here's the thing about this kind of work. We often go straight away to strategy. Let's do the implementation. What can I do to fix it, right?
Trying to go.
Yeah. What can I do? The thing that I'd like to challenge you with is that you don't focus on the doing and that you focus on the being. Because the question is, who are you being? And where does this come from? It's like trying to build a house or build foundations for a house without actually knowing what soil you're dealing with, without actually knowing how deep the soil is, what kind of soil it is, right? Okay. Really important that we know that kind of information. And so creating awareness around where your habits and behaviors come from, where your ways of thinking and believing about the world come from, is really important. And this is why I spend weeks with my clients building this really deep self-awareness. Obviously, this process doesn't stop. It's an ongoing process because as you go through the work, you uncover more layers about yourself. So moving away from what do I need to do now, going to actually, where does all of this come from? And just spend some time actually becoming aware of your behaviors.
I'm still at what do I need to do now? I'm like, right,
yeah, I know.
I need to set an hour a week to sit down and reflect. Like I'm still in the doing mode.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if that works for you, and this is what I really love with my clients, I like to encourage them to do it their way. If that works for you, Lisa, to sit down an hour a week and actually really reflect on the week and your behaviours and some of the things.
I would find that really difficult.
If that works for you, cool.
Yep.
For me, for example, I'm someone who reflects in an ongoing way. So I'll be in the car and I'll be thinking about something, or I'll be on my way to somewhere else, or I'll be having a conversation with someone and something will come up and I'll go, oh yeah, this is really interesting. I've never noticed this before. And so that's how I process through conversations. And everybody has to kind of figure out what your own awareness building looks like for you. But journaling is a really good way to start. And if you're a people person, actually just sitting down with someone who you feel safe to have those conversations with.
Nice. Good idea. There you go. You just gave me something to do.
Yeah, the doing.
Boxes and Briefs is proudly brought to you by Gilligan Shepherd, the problem solvers in business.
All right, Sophie, let's go a little bit deeper.
Sounds good.
Let's talk about boundaries. How can business owners set boundaries without feeling like they're letting other people down, as you alluded to before?
One of the core parts of setting boundaries is communicating your boundaries. Communicating your boundaries in a way that helps the other person understand why you are setting this boundary. So what happens to a lot of us who have people-pleasing habits is that we have stretched our boundaries, right? We've gone over our boundaries and have pleased people in ways that we thought we needed to, even though it didn't really work for us. So we've essentially moved our boundary from where it was way further out. So, and what starts to happen is that other people get used to those stretched boundaries.
You start resenting them for accepting it.
Absolutely, yeah. And so what's really important is that we then actually have conversations with those people and go, heck, actually, I've realized that I've been overextending myself. I've been doing this for a really long time. What I've realized for myself now, that it actually doesn't work for me anymore. Now, this is what I would like to implement. And this is the reason I want to implement this. So it's important that we have those conversations with people. A good friend of mine, when I was running my previous gift box business, which was a bit of a passion project with a really good friend of mine, and she used to call it the no surprise quest. Boundaries are there to let people know what you're okay with and what you're not okay with, how you want to be treated and how will they be treated. And if we move boundaries without communicating, then we're surprising people. And that's why there's often then, friction and, arguments, because the other person is caught off guard. So it's important that we have open and honest conversations about it. And sometimes that stuff's really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, and it feels that we're making ourselves very vulnerable. But here is the thing, and I think for us busy people who feel like we always have to be busy, it often comes with this feeling of we have to show that we're strong, or we have to show that we can't show our weaknesses, we can't show our vulnerabilities. Now, I would really like to change that and challenge that, because your vulnerabilities are actually your strength. And if we were to live in a world where more people would show their vulnerabilities, we would all be getting along a lot better. Because as soon as you show your own vulnerabilities, as soon as you let people know that, actually I haven't done things the way I would like to do them, and this is what's happened for me, we're actually giving other people permission to have those conversations with us too. And you will often find this when one person starts doing it, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's an organization, whether it's in your family. If one person starts to get vulnerable and allows themselves to be seen for who they really are, with all the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything else in between, you start to give other people the permission to do the same.
do that as
and it's
well.
a ripple effect.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. So what's the one well-being practice that you've seen make the biggest difference in how somebody runs their business?
The way you start your day.
No,
The beginning.
Your
that's not
morning.
what I was expecting.
Yes, the morning. I know, right?
I mean, we do special things on Mondays.
That's true. Yeah.
When I say the way you start your day, what I mean the way you start your day as an individual. So the way you get up and the way you begin your day impacts the way you feel for the entire rest of the day. So for example, have you ever overslept, missed your alarm, realized that you've overslept and missed your alarm, and woken up in complete panic, right? Now think about what the rest of this day looked like for you. You kind of feel like you will always...
I know you did.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what this feels like, and I'm pretty sure everybody else does too, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you're chasing your tail for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a morning where you get up and, you know, you do something for yourself, whether this is meditation, whether this is sitting your coffee without it getting cold, right? Whether this is staring out the window, whether this is journaling, whether this is listening to a podcast you really enjoy. But doing something that feels nourishing to you, that feels calming and inspiring to you in the morning is going to be the biggest changer, game changer. Because what happens over time, again, it's long term, not short term, you will start to experience the positive stacking effect. Now, the positive stacking effect happens when you stack a lot of positive experiences over and over again on top of each other. And so when then a few in quotation mark negative experiences come along, it just knocks off a few of the positive one, but you have heaps of positive ones left, so it doesn't matter so much. Whereas if you are having a lot of, in again quotation mark, negative experiences happen in your everyday life over and over again, you have a pile of negative experiences, and so when a couple of other negative experiences come along that may happen to be a bit bigger than normal,
I'm out.
That's when you get the plates overflowing and people are losing their stuff. Right? So this positive and negative stacking is a really important thing to be aware of. And if you become intentional, and this is the word intentionality, because you can't talk about well-being as a business strategy without the word intentionality. You must get intentional about how you start your day.
I love it.
And I'd really avoid looking at your phone for the first hour. There is actually biologically something that happens when we look at the LED screen first thing in the morning. Our eyes are designed to wake up to natural lighting. And I had an interesting conversation with an optometrist about my daughter a few months back, and she said it's actually one of the biggest things that a lot of people are waking up to their phones, and not just is it impacting their eyesight, it's actually impacting your well-being. Because you are designed, your nervous system is designed to be exposed to natural light. So you want to just avoid your phone as much as you can first thing in the morning. And create some practices for yourselves that you really enjoy. I mean, not everybody loves meditation, but that's okay. Start a gratitude practice.
I'm hearing it. I mean, I'm relating to it in the fact that a very long time ago, I read that book about making your bed in the morning. And I relate, because if I make my bed in the morning, tick, I've got something done, and it sets me up for that frame of mind for the day to tick, get things done. So if I do the same with well-being, sorry, I'm a very practical person, then I like this idea of positive stacking. And
the cool thing is you can do this positive stacking throughout your entire day.
It's in the moments.
Yes. And even if it's just if you're driving somewhere, think of 3 things you're grateful for. I know gratitude is you know, I can imagine that there's a few people rolling their eyes and they're going, oh God, here we go again, the bloody gratitude thing. So everybody talks about it, right? It really is a thing. It actually biologically changes us on the inside, that makes us feel, it releases certain hormones in our body, like oxytocin, serotonin, all of those beautiful hormones which we want to have pulsing through our bodies. And the more of those you know, positive hormones that we've got going through our body, the more inspired we will feel, the more inclined we will feel to do our greatest work. And I don't know about you, Lisa, but I want to do my greatest work, and I'm pretty much everybody else really wants to do the same thing.
I'm running out of lifetime. Getting older. Got to do better with it.
Sure, you've got heaps to go.
I do. Okay, so I was going to ask a question about business owners who are already feeling overwhelmed. What's one small change that they can make? But it sounds like you've just given us quite a few there.
Yeah, look, overwhelm is, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. If you are experiencing overwhelm more often than not, it means that you have been running on stress mode for a really long time. And again, it's a lot harder to deal with overwhelm than it is to deal with stress when it happens, or, you know, patterns of stress. The first thing I would say you do is you stop. You stop. And I know this is really hard for a lot of people. A lot of my clients that come to me, they are in overwhelm and they feel like they need to be doing all the things. But you must find, even if it's just half an hour or an hour, to just stop and breathe and just be in this moment. If you're finding your mind racing, right, which happens to so many of us, find something positive to focus on and really just allow yourself to be in that moment. And once you are feeling calmer, you can then just take a piece of paper and going, this is all the stuff I feel overwhelmed about, and just put it on paper, because everything's always in our heads, and it makes it way harder to deal with, because it becomes this jumbled mess, right? Like a yarn basket where all the different has unraveled.
All tangled together.
Yeah, it's all tangled. I would say just stop and allow yourself to put it all on paper and make sense of it, and start with one thing.
Yeah.
Just one thing. I think that's the easiest way to start to deal with overwhelm.
Start doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that there will be people out there who want to know, okay, well, what's the return on investment of investing in wellbeing? Which is, I struggle with that question when people ask me about what's the return on investment with brand. It's very hard to measure.
Yes, incredibly hard to measure. And I actually really love this question, Lisa, because it's a lot of people will be asking themselves that, right? And when we have question, or especially when it comes to business, it's always about what are the outcomes? What's the physical stuff? Like what can we see, tangibly see? The thing about our well-being is that in the beginning, you will not necessarily see much of a change. You will feel a bit different. It is about the long-term change. It's about long-term sustainable change. So when it comes to ROI, I think the question has to be, what does it even mean to you? What do you define as a return on investment when it comes to your well-being, right?
Well, I think we're stuck in this gap at the moment. There seems to be a generational thing, right? Work hard, play hard, or work really hard and go home to your family. And work becomes this, you just got to get it done. We've got goals. We've got to do this. And there has been no place for well-being in the workplace. So we're in that generational gap where the younger people, in my opinion, understand a little bit more better about looking after yourself, what the end results and long-term results of that are. So there's a lot of people who are stuck in this middle thing at the moment where you're just expected to work.
Yeah.
So how do you get that manager to invest in well-being?
Well, I think the reality of life is that you can't convince people that don't want to be convinced. You can't make people do what they don't want to do. So if you have a manager, or if you have a CEO or a boss that doesn't want to invest in your well-being, you have a choice around that. And you don't have to stay in that workplace. And chances are that a lot of you listeners out there have amazing skills, incredible experiences, and are really, really valuable employees or business owners. You don't have to stick around people that don't value what you do and that are not ready to value and give you space in regards to your well-being. I know that's sometimes a really tough conversation to have, but the reality is, and I really feel quite strongly about this, the businesses that fail to invest in their people's well-being will lose the talent, and they will end up closing doors long term. Because we are in a huge shift where we're shifting from a profit-driven culture to people-driven cultures.
Yes.
And what we're starting to see is that the companies that are really taking off and building sustainable companies that are doing groundbreaking stuff, they all have a people-driven model. Because that is what is going to make your businesses last long term. Simon Sinek talks about this in his book, The Infinite Game. I really love this book. And he brings up a few statistics that are super interesting that I really want to just iterate for a minute because it really brings it home. He said that in the 60s, the average, or 60s and 70s, the average life expectancy of a business or company was around 63 years. The average life expectancy now of a business, around the time the book was written, which was I think around 2016 or something like that, was only 18 years. Now, in the 80s, as the business world is concerned, there was a shift from the people-driven culture to profit-driven culture. That's when we really started looking into prioritising the investors and, prioritising the profit that's made at the end of the year. I was really surprised to learn that because, wow, that's actually not that long ago, right?
No.
So the effects that we're seeing in business now in terms of this profit-driven culture is only really 40, 50 years old. And we're already seeing the effects of this this really short-term thinking, because that's what a profit-driven culture is. It's very short-term thinking.
Yep.
It's not connected to a bigger cause. What are you trying to create as a business? Why are you even operating? Sure, yes, you might want to make some money, but what's actually the purpose underneath all of that? And I think this is going to be really challenging for a lot of people.
It is.
And in the end, if I look at my business, for me, it's about wanting to change the business world and the world for my children, because I don't want them to grow up in a world that I've experienced where being burnt out and stressed and overwhelmed has become the norm.
Yeah.
I don't want my children to grow up in a world like that, and I don't want that for my children's children. So that's my bigger purpose, right? And I've worked with other companies who have a bigger purpose of, we want to change the industry. We want to, where it's really about a customer-focused approach and people-focused approach, where it's about how can we give value to people,
Yes.
right? And how can we do this long term?
I can hear the passion. I love it.
And I really feel strongly
Yep.
about this, and I think and it's exciting to be alive in this time, because we are on the cusp of a huge change.
Yep.
We are moving back towards that people-driven model, and it's starting to show that economically this is actually going to improve people's bottom line
Yep.
in the long run.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's about long-term sustainable approaches. Imagine all our companies and businesses would have a life expectancy of 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Right? How many
Yep.
businesses close their doors after 5, 10 years, even less?
Yeah.
A huge amount. And just the economic cost and the cost in people
Yeah.
is incredible, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you've opened up a lot of Pandora's boxes right there. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you to talk about this more, how can they do that?
So a good way to get in touch is actually just via email, hello@sophiek.co.nz, but otherwise you can find me on socials, or get in touch with the beautiful Lisa, who can do an intro.
Love to do that.
Yeah.
I admire your work, love your passion, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be back again. I feel very humbled.
Oh, it was good.
Awesome. Great.
Boxes and Briefs is proudly brought to you by Gilligan Shepherd, the problem solvers in business.